I first realized that this was a problem for me when I was scrolling through my NaNoWriMo draft and I realized all of these chapters start the same way. Hey everyone, it's Dana Tiller. I'm an author working on publishing my novel Collide, and this is the YouTube channel where I talk about writing and the writing community. Today's video topic is chapter beginnings and how to mix them up a little bit, which is something that I personally have been working on as I have been revising the draft of Collide that I wrote during NaNoWriMo. Now, of course, during NaNoWriMo, the whole goal is just to get words down on the page and they don't have to be perfect. But I realized that a lot of my chapters started with my main character waking up in the morning. Now, that's not to say that I never have a chapter that begins with my character waking up, but I knew I needed to mix it up a little bit, and I wanted to share some of the strategies that I've learned throughout this process. The first one has just been to pay attention to other writers' chapters while I've been reading. One of my goals for 2022 is to read more books, and as I have been reading and listening to audiobooks, I've paid close attention to chapters' beginnings and ends. And when an author does something that I really admire or I really want to try in my own writing, I pay extra close attention to that. Now, of course, every story is going to be different, and some things that one author does might not work in my story, but it's cool to see what other published authors are doing to start their chapters and end their chapters to see if there's anything that I could incorporate into my own stories. And with that said, here's a few things that I've noticed have been successful while reading and revising. Tip number one is to cut out the fluff. I am an author who loves setting the scene and describing the setting, and of course we have to find that balance between action and description, but I noticed that in a lot of my NaNoWriMo chapters, I would spend a long time setting up the scene and getting into the action, and I really just need to cut all that out and get to the action. So I have had to sit down and ask myself some really tough questions about if a part of the story is really necessary or if it's just something that I'm attached to. Cutting out your darlings can be really painful, but when you notice that your writing is more concise or you get good feedback from a beta reader, it is all going to be worth it. Tip number two is to introduce a new setting or a new character. And I know I just said that I spend too much time describing settings, but it could be cool to catch the reader off guard by introducing a new place or a new person. In my story specifically, there is a part where my main character Heather meets one of the antagonists, and I'll be honest, the NaNoWriMo version of that scene is kind of bland and it's not my favorite. So I'm really interested in experimenting with introducing her at the beginning of a chapter to see if that livens things up a little bit. And I haven't done this yet, so if you're interested to see what I eventually land on, you should follow me over at my Instagram. That's where I update the most often on my writing journey. The next tip for mixing up chapter beginnings is also one that I haven't experimented with yet, but I'm excited to dabble into a little bit, and that is to explore the theme of the story right at the beginning of a chapter. This is actually an idea that I got from a writing blog called NowNabble.com, and basically the idea is that you just try to incorporate the theme of the story into the beginning and the ends of different chapters. So for example, one of the themes in my story Collide is belonging and my main character feeling like she doesn't fit in or know where her place in the world is. So if I ended a chapter with her kind of feeling like she found her place in the world and she is starting to get it, beginning the next chapter with that rug kind of being ripped out from underneath her and her feeling back at square one could be a really interesting way to create some juxtaposition and catch the reader off guard a little bit. Of course I have explored these themes in Collide, but I've never really explicitly thought about using those kinds of moments to begin or end my chapters. So this is something I'm really excited to do as I'm combing through to revise Collide. And finally, my favorite tip, and the one that has personally helped me the most as I've been revising, is to change perspectives. Now, some books lend really naturally to this and others don't, so just like all the tips in this video, this might not work for your story, but for me personally and for Collide, this has been something that I've had a ton of fun with. Different characters are going to have different ideas about situations, and that's something that you can use to your advantage. My story Collide is third-person omniscient, and it mostly follows Heather, the main character, But it has been really fun to kind of get out of her head a little bit and think about what other characters might bring to the table when it comes to describing different situations. There were a few instances of perspective switching in the most recent draft of Collide that I did, and my best friend and beta reader Chris absolutely loved them. She loved when we could get out of Heather's head a little bit and experience someone else's thoughts. So that is why I ended up trying it out for other parts in the book that just weren't feeling quite right to me, and I have really loved the results so far. So these are just some of the things that I have found to be helpful for me as I've been revising my novel. This is not an exhaustive list by any means, and of course there are plenty of things that you can do to mix up your chapter beginnings, but these are just some of the things that I have found helpful lately. Let me know in the comments which idea you think you want to try, and if you have any other ideas that you think I might be interested in trying, because I am still going to get stuck on some of these chapters. Give me a follow over on Instagram or Twitter if you're interested in following my writing, querying, and publishing journey, and leave some comments down below if you have future video topic ideas for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next video, and happy writing!